In June 2020, at 14,000 feet above sea level, soldiers from the two most populous nations on Earth fought a brutal hand-to-hand battle. They used rocks, iron rods, and their bare hands. Because of a strict border agreement, no firearms were used. 20 Indian soldiers died, and U.S. intelligence estimates suggest Chinese losses were significantly higher. Two massive nuclear-armed superpowers engaged in deadly medieval combat. This clash was the physical manifestation of a modern geopolitical crisis that has been steadily escalating for decades, all while the rest of the world barely noticed. To understand why these soldiers were fighting, you have to look at the border itself. The line of actual control is a disputed 3,400-kilometer boundary running across some of the most inhospitable terrain on the planet. This map details the boundary lines drawn by British colonial administrators. These approximate strokes, made by mapmakers who never visited the terrain they were partitioning, left a legacy of ambiguity that continues to drive conflict 70 years later. Because the border was never formally demarcated, both militaries genuinely believe they are patrolling their own sovereign territory. They both view the other as an illegal occupying force. That shared, conflicting conviction creates a zero-sum geopolitical trap. When both sides are convinced they are simply defending their homeland, any attempt at diplomatic compromise automatically feels like a surrender. Military strategists called China's approach to this border salami slicing. Instead of launching a massive invasion, Beijing takes small, methodical territorial bites. Each slice is individually too minor to trigger a war, but over 2 decades, those slices add up. China rapidly constructs permanent military villages, helipads, and roads deep into disputed territory, changing the facts on the ground before India can mount a diplomatic response. This infrastructure allowed China to easily deploy thousands of troops directly to the border within days. For years, India took the exact opposite approach. During the Cold War era, Indian defense planners intentionally left their own border roads unpaved and difficult to navigate, calculating that the rough terrain would physically slow down an advancing Chinese army. During the 2020 clash, that delay tactic backfired. The terrible road conditions heavily hindered India's own ability to send reinforcements to the front lines. While India relied on the mountains themselves to act as a barrier, China was actively transforming that same terrain into a launchpad. One side was banking on geography to provide security, the other was systematically building the infrastructure to overcome it. You cannot accurately assess Indian defense planning without looking west. China and Pakistan maintain an all-weather strategic partnership, coordinating both military and economic goals. Beijing has poured over $62 billion into the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. This massive infrastructure network gives China crucial direct land access to the Arabian Sea. This map illustrates the ultimate nightmare scenario for Indian defense planners, a synchronized two-front war. They are forced to prepare for an attack from China on the northern border at the exact same time as an attack from Pakistan on the northwestern border. Facing this pressure, India rapidly expanded its military budget and formalized the Quad Alliance, aligning their strategic defensive interests with the United States, Japan, and Australia. A local dispute over unmapped Himalayan rocks is now forcing the realignment of major global powers as India works to break out of a perceived regional encirclement. This entire geopolitical standoff sits on top of a highly asymmetric nuclear equation. China possesses an estimated 350 nuclear warheads, many attached to missiles with global, intercontinental reach. India counters with an estimated 160 warheads, utilizing systems designed primarily for regional deterrence against its immediate neighbors. Both nations maintain a strict no-first-use doctrine, but military planners in both countries frequently discuss loopholes regarding chemical or biological attacks that keep the risk of nuclear escalation alive. Yet the most powerful force stopping a war might be entirely economic. Despite physical border clashes and India banning hundreds of Chinese software apps, bilateral trade between the two countries still exceeds $136 billion a year. Critical Indian industries are heavily dependent on Chinese supply chains, particularly the raw materials needed for domestic pharmaceutical production. A major conflict would instantly shatter these vital supply chains. Neither nation can afford the economic ruin a full-scale war would bring, locking them into a high-tension paralysis. So, is an all-out war actually coming? An honest assessment of the facts says a traditional, declared war is highly unlikely. The economic costs, the threat of mutually assured destruction, and the sheer physical barrier of the Himalayas create three hard limits to escalation. Instead, we are looking at a permanent, low-grade confrontation. Both sides will continue their relentless infrastructure races, and proxy conflicts will expand across the region. As China continues its strategy to test the boundaries of the disputed zone, more violent, localized microclashes are inevitable. 2 billion people, 2 massive economies, and 2 nuclear arsenals are effectively locked in a permanently militarized Cold War, delicately balancing on top of the world. The Galwan clash was fought with rocks to avoid triggering a holocaust. As the competition for the roof of the world intensifies, the true risk lies in whether the economic and nuclear constraints holding these nations back can survive the next spark.